All right, great. Thanks, everyone. I see a few more people trickling in. We have 18 people in the webinar right now. See some familiar faces and names from our last workshop. So thanks for sticking with us through this process. So we'll get started, and if other people are still joining in, we'll welcome them as they do. All right. Great. So thanks, everyone. As I said, this is the draft plan webinar. We started this process over a year ago and have just released the draft plan for the active transportation plan. And just as an introduction, my name is Beth Martin. I'm a planner with Alta Planning and Design, and we've been working with the City of Sunnyvale. And also in the room today is Lillian Sang, the lead transportation planner with the City of Sunnyvale, and has been the project manager on this active transportation plan.
All right. Hello all, thanks for joining us today.
Okay, and just an overview of what we'll talk about tonight. As I said, I see some familiar faces, but we will do just a little overview of the active transportation plan at large and where we are in the process. And then we'll walk through a little bit of the bicycle, pedestrian, and safe routes to school recommendations, where we were last time, and some additional pieces, including the prioritization. We'll walk through how to provide feedback on this draft plan to make sure that we can review your comments and revise the plan to incorporate those. And then last, we'll have a bit of a question and answer feedback time. We may focus a little bit more on process questions, but please give us all your questions, and you can do so in the Q&A box that should be on your dashboard, on your Zoom dashboard, and you can submit questions all throughout the presentation. Any questions that we don't answer here tonight as part of the webinar, we will provide a response to and send out all the questions and responses to all the registered attendees tonight. And I'm not sure if I said this, but we're also recording this webinar right now, so if you have any friends who weren't able to make it tonight, we can also share that with you so other people can see this as well. So the active transportation plan consists of 3 components that have guided the planning efforts. We've been looking at bicycling conditions and recommendations, pedestrian or walking conditions and recommendations, and safe routes to school conditions and recommendations across the city. And in terms of where we are tonight, so as I said, we started this process in April 2019, and it started with a heavy focus on public engagement. We did a lot of school walk audits, focus groups, mobile workshops, and a number of walking and biking tours. And this was really to get people's initial input on walking and biking recommendations. This last December, we had our first community workshop and solicited feedback on the draft recommendations. And tonight, we're having a webinar in place of our second community workshop to get feedback on the draft plan. And then looking forward in April and May, we'll have a couple of meetings with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, and then the plan will go for City Council adoption in May. So that's kind of the where we are in the plan right now. So what are we looking for feedback on in specific? I think we can look at 3 things. The first are the recommendations. We got a number of comments on the bike, ped, and safe routes to school recommendations in the last community workshop, but we want to see how we address those, if you have other comments or questions for us on the recommendations themselves. As well, we have developed and published as part of this draft plan the prioritization criteria and the priority projects. And so we're really looking for input from folks around what they think about the prioritization criteria, did we miss anything, and then looking specifically at the high priority projects, which is where the city will be looking to do some of the first investment, making sure that we're getting the right projects. And then lastly, just providing input on the public draft plan at large. You'll see at the top I included the site sunnyvaleatp.altaplanning.site, and this is where you can go online to comment on the PDF and view each other's comments, and provide feedback that we'll be able to use as our project team. Okay, so I'm just going to give a quick overview of the bikeway network. So on the map to the right, you can see it's very small. I recommend you also take a look at the online PDF tool, but this is the complete bikeway network with the proposed bikeways. And just to give people a sense of how it was developed, we looked at 4 strategies, one being making it comfortable and connected, and we heard that, standard bike lanes are comfortable for some, but most people biking in Sunnyvale really want to be using more physically separated bike lanes, especially on busy arterials. So that's where that strategy came from. Strategy 2, make it local, is around the bike route network on residential streets that would connect people to their local destinations, and that's about creating a network of low-volume streets when biking shorter distance, and that would connect people to destinations such as schools and parks and their local shopping needs. Third, fill in the network. We understand that some roadways are constrained and there might not be the ability to provide more separated bikeways or low-stress bikeways, but we do understand the importance of connecting bikeways where possible so that we can create a complete and connected bicycle network. And then the last strategy, focus on the intersections, is around creating a network of intersection recommendations that connect the bikeways, understanding that unprotected intersections or other challenging bikeway crossings can leave people feeling vulnerable while biking. So those are the 4 strategies that set the stage for developing the bikeway network. And so just for reference, you'll see this is in the plan as well, just a quick overview of the bikeway facility types if you're less familiar with that. And this plan is recommending nearly 85 miles of bikeways, and that includes 17 miles of trails, 17 miles of separated bikeways, and over 20 miles of traffic-calmed bicycle boulevards. So in addition to the bikeways themselves, the plan has a number of bikeway spot improvements that include crossing improvements, traffic control improvements, and sometimes overcrossings and undercrossings to facilitate movements across the network. So these 2 pieces, the bikeways and the spot improvements, we're definitely looking for feedback on. And then kind of the third component, which is new from the draft recommendations, is the prioritization process. And this looks pretty similar between the bike prioritization and the ped prioritization. And we looked at and ran an analysis looking at 5 criteria of collision reduction, equity, access to key destinations, a community-identified need, or cross-town connection. There's more detail in the plan itself, but looking at safety, looking at providing connections to more vulnerable populations, providing connections to transit stations and other key destinations in the community, and acknowledging the areas that people within the planning process identified as needing to get to by bike. And then the 5th criteria is really about prioritizing the bikeways that get people long distances across the city. And so the outcome of this prioritization process is 19 spot locations and over 23 miles of bikeways that have been prioritized as high priority. So that's just a little bit of overview on the bikeway network and how the recommendations were developed and the prioritization was run. I'm just going to walk through a little bit about the parallel process of developing the pedestrian network. So this is the pedestrian recommendations, and this was developed by highlighting a number of corridors and areas. And these are with the idea that everywhere in the city is really important to be focusing on walkability, but there are some key places where investment can really help the walkability and conditions that exist today. And those corridors and areas were developed by looking at safety concerns, publicly identified barriers, looking at equity, and also looking at where there was the highest number of local needs and local destinations within distance from residential areas. And so within the plan, we identify a number of spot improvements, over 82 spot improvements that are focused within those areas and those corridors to improve walkability. And for those who are interested in what those crossing improvements might look like, there are a number of typologies that the plan lays out, spelling out some standard signalized and unsignalized intersections and what the typical safety improvements that the city will be considering, what those will look like. So you can get a sense of kind of what are the tools in the toolbox for pedestrian improvements. In terms of prioritization for the pedestrian improvements, as I said, it follows a similar criteria as the bikeways of looking at collision reduction or where safety is a factor, equity, again, looking at the spots that are close to key destinations, looking at community-identified need, and looking at the corridors that would provide cross-town connection. And so within the pedestrian project prioritization, the high-priority projects are 10 spot improvements and 23 what we're calling safe routes to school locations, which are crossing locations near Sunnyvale public schools. And then as kind of the third parallel track of this plan, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the Safe Routes to School portion. As you can see on this map, this is the 21 public schools that are served by Sunnyvale students. And as part of this planning process, we conducted school walk audits looking either at the morning or afternoon of dismissal for school to see, what were the places where we could recommend improving walking and biking conditions around these schools. And so through the Safe Routes to School, part of the draft plan, you'll see a couple of pieces, one being just these individual school summaries for these schools, giving some background information and any initial mode split information that we have. And then second, you'll see these improvement maps, which show infrastructure improvements around the school campus that are focused at improving and helping walking and biking for students. So that's just a little overview of, as you navigate through the plan, what you're looking at and kind of what are the key pieces that we're looking at to get input on. So in terms of the draft plan, I just want to give you a sense of some next steps, where we are now and the pieces moving forward. So the comment period for the public draft plan opened up on March 4th and will be open through March 24th. Within that period, there'll be a Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting on March 19th. After the comment period, the project team will take these comments, do revisions, and produce the final plan. That final plan will go to the BPAC on April 16th and to City Council on May 19th. So just want to walk through a couple different ways that you can provide feedback. So one, and I think this is a really good way to review all the recommendations all in one place, is that you can use the online tool, sunnyvaleatp.altaplanning.site. And this is where people can view other people's comments, submit comments, like or dislike other people's comments, and just see what other people are saying as well. Second, we welcome you to submit comments via email or in writing to Lillian. Here's her contact information for email and written address. And lastly, there are a couple plans that are in hard copy at the Senior Center and at the library with some comment cards. And so you can also visit those locations and drop off those comment cards there.
One note is that as of tomorrow, we will be, the senior center in Sunnyvale will be closed. So we have moved those hard copies to the community center. So the public could go to the community center to view the hard copies and also provide any comments in the comment box there.
Okay, great. And then, so that's kind of how you can provide feedback. So our team is here now, and we're just kind of sorting through the questions that you've been submitting through the process and through tonight's webinar. And if you haven't already submitted a question and you'd like to, you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom dashboard, the webinar dashboard, that little icon that says Q&A. And feel free to click that and submit comments. We're going to just take a 1-minute pause as we sort through, and we'll be right back with some of the responses. All right, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We're just sorting through some questions now. So I'm going to actually field a question around, this is around the upcoming BPAC meeting. Will it still be taking place? Will there be a virtual connection? And I'll field that to Dennis and Lillian.
So this is Lillian with the city. So currently, the plan is that we will still be hosting the BPAC meeting next Thursday. However, if there's any changes, we will publicly notice that if the format of the meeting will be changed, or if if there's anything that would be different from the normal meeting that we typically hold.
Great. I also see a question, if I submit comments online, can I save all of my comments locally on my computer? If that is around the online PDF tool, that those comments go into kind of our admin of the PDF tool, but I don't think are saved locally on your computer. So you may want to also make note of them for your own personal reference. All right, I see just kind of a question around the large gap between the low and high cost estimate for Class 4 bikeways. So separated bikeways just have a real range of design. They can be something like a flexible delineator delineating the bike lane from the travel lane, or can be as robust as like a concrete barrier. And so just kind of those differences in design can have a huge impact in the construction costs of the separated bikeway, just based on material.
In terms of whether there's a way, there's a question of whether there's a way to measure most shift to assess the reduction in VMT due to increased walking, biking, or scootering. So the way we actually, I guess there's several ways that we're looking to measure most shift. One of them is based on the household survey that, the national household survey that is being put out every, I think periodically. I can't remember exactly how often they do it, but then, so that's one of the key, that's one of the ways that we obtain data in terms of how people get to work, whether they walk, drive, bike, take transit, etc. And then on top of that, what we also look at is we work with companies within Sunnyvale to monitor whether their transportation demand management program is working, how well how they're working annually. And as part of that, some of the companies actually do a survey of their employees in terms of how they commute to work. So we also look at that as well. And in terms of the school side, our Safe Route to School coordinators work with the individual schools to do hand tallies and try to collect data in terms of how students commute to school. So that's another way that we would be able to assess the percentage of the mode shift. But then in terms of the VMT, then that would be based. We're supposed to be reporting VMT based on for our CAP for our climate action playbook, and we are working with the transportation demand model that we have, and using all these inputs and so forth to measure VMT. So as we build more bike facilities, the model would be taken into account of how that would shift some of the travel mode that people use in order when they travel to the destination.
I see a question around just the compressed timeline and the need to switch to electronic commenting, and asking if the city can take a more proactive role in soliciting feedback for the ATP through its social media channels. So I think that's a really good question. So we can definitely talk to the city's communication team, but I would also say as much as folks on the line can also help us get the word out, share the PDS online tool. It seems to be a really good way, low barrier way for people to be able to comment on their own time. And so as much as you can help share that with your own resources, that would be a help as well.
Yeah, and we also have been advertising using social media on our online commenting tools. So we're trying to reach more people that way and direct them to use our tool.
This is Dennis Ng, Transportation Traffic Manager. There are a couple of questions in here about the varying costs, the high costs and low costs, and questions about using quick build methodology. So the cost estimates are actually inclusive of quick build. So doing short-term quick implementation devices, and then the larger prices inclusive of, like, say, constructing curb, gutter, and doing all the detailed civil improvements like storm drainage, and then making sure it's the long-term fit. So within the bike plan, we are covering both sides of the spectrum. If council or the public wanted to get something in quickly, we can use low-cost options and quick build. If there is a desire to put in more expensive and permanent, and we can do that. We have cost estimates for that option.
And there's a question about whether Bicycle Boulevard would include some of the traffic calming features. So for Bicycle Boulevards, we typically, so basically those are on some of our residential local streets and so forth. So we do plan on implementing some traffic calming measures along those boulevards, so that it would help slow down some of the traffic and also provide a more comfortable experience for bicyclists on those boulevards.
Yeah.
There's a question about measuring mode shift side surveys. Can we use intersection cameras to do bike and ped counts? We are looking at the technology, and we are considering permanent bike and ped counters at location. So we are looking at that for the future.
Thank you all for all your questions. So just to reiterate, for some of the questions that we won't get to tonight, I see some good questions that are, specific to different roadways. We will provide project team responses and send them all of the responses to all the questions out to all the registered participants for tonight's webinar. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them here and we can provide responses.
Thank you for all your questions that have been submitted. Our project team is gonna sort them. It's gonna look at them and also try to answer them. We plan on providing the response to all these questions and post them online on the project website on Tuesday next week. And when we do that, we'll also send out a notification to all the people who subscribe to the mailing list. So you'll get notified that the list of the list of questions and the responses have posted. Also, as the conditions of the COVID-19 evolve, our city is working closely with the different departments and try to figure out whether things would change or not. And if we do decide that certain things are going to be moved online, we'll let everyone know via the mailing list.
Great. Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you all for being part of this quick overview tonight. We hope that you continue to submit comments. As Lillian said, also through the PDF tool, we've gotten quite a few so far. I think we're at over 200 comments, and so the project team is reviewing these, and that is a really good way for us to see other people's comments. And we look forward to your future engagement. Thank you all for joining tonight.